Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, mystery seekers, musers, conspiracy theorists, interdimensional philosophers, seekers of truth, and last, but certainly not least, all of you with confirmation bias. You will find what you're looking for. You're listening to Musings on Mysteries in the Mythical Matrix, family-friendly podcast where we logically speculate on life and theorize the fourth dimension exists and is the spiritual.
Here, we're dedicated to pushing science, logic, and the Socratic method to their limits as we discuss the mysteries and mythologies of the world.
Feeling trigger warning for this episode is a logical conversation, so if applying the Socratic method on fringe topics is disturbing to you, turn off the podcast now.
So let's go into today's fish fact, which I'm hijacking the episode.
Whoa, wait, what? Hijacking? This is Science 3. What are you talking about? I got all sorts of follow-ups I want to do. I need to go over some more stuff for the dating method. I have unsatisfied listeners that really want to get some more answers.
Well, now it's fish science episode, so take that as you will.
All right, but two conditions then. Two conditions.
Okay.
Instead of fish fact then, since you're turning the whole episode into a fish fact, I want to get an insect fact that I get to do. 2, I get to make unlimited fish puns this whole episode.
Well, I don't think I can stop you on the fish puns.
That's true.
But I can
You
agree
really
to
can.
the insect fact.
All right, cool. So shall I kick it off for the insect fact, or do you want to...
Go for it.
Do you have anything else? All right, so I just started a new job recently as an arborist. For those of you that don't know, that is being a tree monkey, climbing trees and doing work up there. So I was talking to a buddy of mine that's in the industry, and he's actually got a podcast. I'm going to put a quick plug and shout out to him. It's called the Tree Climbers Podcast. So you can find that one on Spotify as well. But I was talking with him, and you know spotter lanternflies, Trace? Do you know what they are?
Yeah, I just killed my first one the other day of the season.
Okay, so you know all this talk and hype about how they're supposed to be so bad for all the trees and stuff in the area and how they kill all these trees? Have you heard all that?
I mean, vaguely. I know they're an invasive species and they could be bad. But
So they're an invasive species, and there's this huge push, at least in Pennsylvania area, to try to dispose of them. It's actually fake for the most part. The spotted lanternfly does not actually harm most trees. The only trees it harms... So basically, the mentality of how it causes harm is that the spotted lanternfly eats like the sap of the tree, and then it poops out honeydew, and that this honeydew can lead to mold forming on like the tree, and then that can cause problems for the tree. Well, the only way that would really cause problems for the tree is if this tree is already incredibly sick. So for healthy trees, it's not going to cause any severe damage to them. But so it's a little bit of propaganda, and this is from my tree climber buddy that has the podcast. So if you like stuff about trees and hear some good joking around stuff, his podcast is definitely good to check out. I listened to a couple episodes. So, but yeah, so there's my insect fact. Spotted lanternflies, it's actually a lot of propaganda from people trying to make money off of the fear mongering. They're not actually that dangerous. They are invasive, but they're not that dangerous to trees.
But who's making the money?
Like tree companies and stuff and like other people in like the lawn business and all that. They'll push that they're really bad for your trees and all that. So then they can come out and they can treat pesticides and make money off of it. Yeah, that's at least my understanding of it. Maybe I've got that dead wrong because I just started doing tree climbing 2 weeks ago. So I don't know, man. Maybe I'm full of crap, but
I'm the fish nerd, not the tree nerd.
Yeah, sure. I'm the tree nerd now. Dude, I learned how to identify different types of oak trees and everything, and it's weird because I'm just looking outside and now I actually know what I'm looking at instead of just looking at oh yeah, that's a tree. I'm like, well, yeah, no, that's a red oak, that's a white oak.
I vaguely know. I have a little tree book that I keep meaning to stick in my car to take with me, but I just keep forgetting.
All I hear is excuses.
You got me there.
Yeah, I know I do. I usually do. All right, so fish nerd, what are we going to be talking about today since you are hijacking my episode on science?
So today I figured we could do a nice little break episode. I just got back from my trip. I didn't really learn too much of this on my trip. It's just something that I did research into before, and I thought it'd be a nice little mini episode for us.
So what I'm hearing is that this fish nerd trip weaponized your fish nerd autism.
Yes.
And now we're all suffering the consequences.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, fair enough then. Fair enough. Way for you to be shellfish.
I'm already regretting my decisions.
Here's a fish fact for you. Most fish have fins.
I mean, that's true.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's actually one of the defining qualities of a fish.
Yeah, it's
So
fair.
technically, all fish would have
But why
fins.
wouldn't they have Danes or Norwegians? Why does it have to be Finns?
Okay.
But how about you tell us before we start this episode here, like officially, how your trip went? Because this is our first time back after your little fish nerd trip, and you were sending me all sorts of cool stuff. So if you want to hit any quick highlights there, go for it.
Oh man, I mean, we could do a whole episode on that, and I think we did decide to see if we could put it to a vote to see if I do go into everything I did there. But 3 weeks down in Chickateague, Virginia, did all kinds of oceanographic stuff. Was out in the bay occasionally, did some like trawling, so basically throwing a net off the back of the boat and pulling up whatever we catch. Caught a ton of cool stuff there. Squid, the mantis shrimp was probably one of the cooler ones. Went kayaking through a few places, a lot of water quality stuff, to see how like salinity's changed in those little creeks and estuaries and stuff. A lot of identifying animals, which I loved. A lot of identifying dirt, which I didn't love as much. Definitely not meant to be a geologist, but a lot of cool stuff. I actually got to help out on an official like project some of the professors were doing. So that was really cool.
It's like actually getting to do like real marine biology research kind of stuff.
Not biology. It's this is geology stuff that they're working on.
like specifically dirt nerd stuff. Okay.
Yeah, but
Okay.
it's pretty cool. A lot of like paleo environmental stuff in a specific area. There's a lot that I could get into there, but no, today what we're going to be doing is not really about fish, but whales.
Aren't whales fish?
No, they're mammals. Sorry, that sounded mean, but no.
Yeah, you're
Whales.
just being condescending. You've got the high water here, and you're looking down at me in the abyss. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to do fish puns. I'm gonna have to Google fish puns and start just rattling.
You have to work on them a little bit.
Yeah, I'm a fish out of water here. They threw me in the deep end, literally.
You need to find your porpoise.
How are you better at this than me? That's ridiculous. That's annoying. All right, okay.
Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. That's all fair in love and war, as they say. So, whales. Why should we care about whales?
So they have a lot of value here. First thing that I could really think of is whale falls. Do you know what a whale fall is?
I do not.
Okay. So a whale fall is when a whale dies and just falls to the bottom of the ocean. Whales, despite being top of the food chain, they provide a lot of nutrients and energy to a plethora of life. So when they die, they'll be floating at the top of the water, where sharks can come up and eat them, and among other things can eat them off the top. And then once they lose their buoyancy and sink down to the bottom, then all the scavengers come and provide a lot of life and mini ecosystems to the deep for years and years and years. You'll have big scavengers like there's some octopus, cusk eels, hagfish. So they'll all come in, and then a little later on there's bone-eating worms. So they'll dissolve down all the bones, and then there's snails and all kinds of stuff. But so that's the one thing. Second, the top of the food chain. So a lot of, I guess, population control for krill and plankton and stuff, which if those get out of hand, that can prove detrimental to a few things. They're also a huge carbon sink. So estimated that they can capture up to around 33 tons of carbon per year, I think it is. I'd have to look more into that science. I couldn't really find too much about that. But besides their, I guess economic is the right word for this. But there's also a lot of studies happening right now where they're trying to figure out if whales have consciousness.
Interesting. Okay.
So I talked about this before in the episode with Harrison, where we were bringing up like consciousness and souls and animals and stuff like that. So I decided to look into a little bit more. First thing, off the top of my head, orcas, different pods have different languages and hunting tactics than other pods.
Are orcas technically whales then?
Yeah.
Okay.
So whales, I mean, yeah, orcas are technically dolphins.
Okay.
I'm not too sure what the exact difference is between whales and dolphins, but pretty much they're cetaceans. All dolphins are whales, but not all whales are dolphins. It's like that kind of thing.
Okay. That makes sense.
So orcas are technically dolphins. There's some other dolphin neurological studies that they do too, because like bottlenose dolphins, they're, I mean, clearly highly intelligent. We train them at SeaWorld, which, by the way, SeaWorld is terrible. Do not go there. They are an awful place to support.
What, are they just like abusive to the fish or something?
I mean, yeah. Have you seen any of the pictures and stuff of orcas in like a small tank where they're like clearly depressed and lonely and they isolate them? And
I don't follow all the fish stuff you do.
Yeah, so
I only see the things you post on Facebook. That's my exposure to fish content.
But no, so they are huge animal abusers for dolphins and orcas, especially orcas. Which, you know, I'm sure they try and treat them fairly, but whenever you stick them in a small tank like that and make them perform tricks and stuff, that can't be too good for them. Right. If you look at captive orcas, you'll see that their dorsal fins are always bent over, and that's I forget exactly why they do that, but there's some like stress and stuff involved.
Do you know apparently stress can kill corals?
Yes. That's a whole other episode we could do.
That is a whole other episode. We will do something on that in the future. But you know what corals have to stress about? Current events.
I knew what you were gonna say, but I couldn't beat you to it.
That's fair. You don't want to be gaslighting me over there.
That's good. That's good.
I had to look that one up. I don't think I really need to credit that, do I? In the show notes, I'm not going to credit that. No, I'm not going to. Puns. You don't need to have. Sue me. You don't need to have.
I don't think you need.
I'm having copyright. A seizure right now. Is what I'm having.
If you can copyright puns, then that's.
Yeah, puns are like royalty free. Like you can just use them without having to cite the source. Yeah. So if you want the source cited for a pun, then like it better be a good pun. Or your ego is just really, really high, I feel like. But just my opinion. My humble tea.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Sorry, I pulled you out of the water there.
Terrible.
SeaWorld is bad. Got it.
Yeah, SeaWorld, awful place. And also, the only instances of orcas killing humans is them killing their trainers.
Huh.
So, like, there's no instances. Actually, that's a lie. I think there might be one instance of an orca attacking a human in the wild. But, no. There's a good few of them in captive that have killed their trainers.
Huh.
Yeah. So, anyway, consciousness. Besides the orcas having known specialized languages and tactics, I believe there's also been studies with humpback whales that have started to come out or have been out recent years that they think, so they'll make a specialized call that then one specific whale will then answer to. So they're starting to think that maybe they have specialized sounds to like call each other out.
So names.
They have names.
Yeah.
Whales might be naming each other.
Which that's actually pretty cool, because then you're looking at a whole other form of intelligence to a whole nother level we've never quantified. Maybe Star Trek had it right. That one whale episode where the whales were actually like the space aliens.
Yeah, or
and then we ignored
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah, we ignored climate change and the decline of the whale population, and the whales came and killed us all until we reversed it in time. Anyway.
One can only hope.
Oh, jeez, that got morbid.
I'm on the side of the ocean, but
why am I not surprised?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's almost like you're a fish nerd or something.
Yeah. But so that could have huge implications of, like you said, whales might have a whole branch of knowledge and language that we can't even achieve, really. But on top of that, whale brains, you can imagine, pretty big. The sperm whale has the largest brain on the planet, weighing 7.8 kilograms, where humans only weigh 1.3.
Wow.
So,
but now, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think I am. But the size of the brain doesn't necessarily have to do with intelligence correlation, does it? Like, you can be very intelligent and have a smaller brain than something else, correct?
Yeah, I mean, if you, not whales, but like velociraptors and stuff, we think that they're pretty smart, but they've got a relatively small brain.
Okay.
So brain size isn't really important, I don't think, but they at least thought it was worthy to note it in the sources that I was getting from. So I figured I'd throw it in there too.
Yeah, fair enough. So I know we're kind of doing more of a fish nerd episode, but here's something to think about in terms of more mysteries in the mythical matrix aspect for any of our listeners that have made it this far in. They'll appreciate this connection here. So like the Tic Tac UFO, wasn't that initially, I forget the guy's name, but the captain or whatever, the commander that was flying that jet, didn't he say that the Tic Tac UFO was initially hovering over the water and actually doing something in the water? Like there was something on the surface, like there was like little ripples. So like it was doing something in the water before it took off and left.
I mean, a lot of UFOs are linked to the ocean. A lot of people say that they actually aren't from outer space, is that they're from underground or in the ocean.
Yeah, so this gets more into the theory of like breakaway civilization kind of thing, which is interesting, and we'll explore. I don't want to derail your derailed fish episode here, little fish nerd.
I mean, hey, if you want to think about it, if you're going to a whole other planet, like let's say you're from the outside and you're coming here to explore and test and whatever form of science they have, and you want to build a base here, where are you going to build it? On land is kind of, you can't really do that, because I feel like if you're that advanced, you would recognize that we have satellites that could take pictures and you wouldn't want to be found. So what's one of the most unexplored areas of our planet? Bottom of the ocean. I feel like that's a pretty...
But we know more about the moon than we do about the ocean.
No. No. We know more about the moon in...
I knew that would piss you off.
I think I've said it before, but like if you take it in the expanse of, I know more about the surface of this basketball than I do about my entire front yard. You know, it's stupid. The moon is way smaller. There's not that much to know about the moon. We know way more quantitative data than the ocean.
Wonder if the moon's hollow though.
I mean, in that case, then
there might be more to know about the moon still.
Yeah, and then we know more about the oceans than we do the moon.
Or did the Nazis actually have a secret space base on the dark side of the moon? I need to stop. I'm sorry. I said fish puns, not derailing your whole episode. Yeah. Just back to whales.
So back to whales. Brains are pretty big. Besides that, they've found structures in their brain that suggest that they have emotions and social stresses, which have also been observed outside in like pods and stuff. So like, it's hard to quantify looking at an animal and saying, oh, it's having this emotion, or you can tell it's stressed right now, because we can't really have a controlled lab experiment with whales that we can with like fish or coral stresses and stuff like that.
Yeah, and then you don't have a way to quantify the emotions as easily either, because it's not like they make the same kind of facial expressions or necessarily cry, unless I don't think they do they? Like they don't emit tears the way that we do?
Probably not. But, you know, maybe we'll uncode the language of the whales and then we can speak to them and then they'll have whale therapy sessions.
Well, on that note, I think our listeners are going to have to shed some tears for a moment because we need to take an ad break. So we will be right back.
Welcome back, whale musers.
Oh, instead of quantum, we're going to make everything whale musers? Okay.
Yeah, or should I say cetacean, maybe?
I don't speak Italian or Latin.
Marine mammal musers.
That doesn't roll off the tongue as much as quantum does.
No, it didn't.
It really doesn't. I'm sorry, buddy. You trying
as soon
there.
As it came out of my mouth, I was like,
no, it doesn't sound right. No, you're flopping around on the boat here. You need to get back in the water. Get back on track.
Okay.
I liked fish until I saw your mullet.
I don't have a mullet.
You have long hair.
Yeah, I guess.
That was one of the fish puns I looked up. Apparently, it
the mullet as a fish. Yeah.
Fell flat. Okay. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, back over to you. Give us some whale stuff.
So we were just talking about the brain structure and emotions in whales. So I didn't really get too much into how we observe them. So there's some anecdotal evidence, which I know you love your anecdotes.
I do. Anecdotes are important.
Mm-hmm. So we've observed in 1990, we observed two young dolphins revisiting where their mother had been, like right before she died. So they like revisited the same area. So, you know, that could show, empathy is a big one. They can remember their parents, which I feel like is a pretty big step of,
memory is a big component. I mean, in psychology, Alzheimer's is a huge, is a disease that wreaks huge havoc because you lose your memories and you kind of lose your identity in a sense in who you are. But
so, yeah, even dolphins having memories, because even the ones that are captive, they remember tricks, they remember patterns, they have all this kind of recognition stuff that they can do. So also, besides that, there's a few different cases of when calves die, their mothers are showing signs of grieving too. So
I feel like that's kind of universal in the animal kingdom, though, for the most, maybe not insects and stuff, but for most animals, to kind of grieve the loss of a young, I feel like that's not uncommon to see. I feel like you see that across most mammals, especially.
Well, maybe, but, that's also just another sign of intelligence to note down. Crows, they've been shown to have, like, funerals for members of their murder dying. A group of crows is called a murder, by the way. Yeah,
for those of you that don't know, our fish nerd is also an avian nerd. Shocker.
I like birds too.
Birds are pretty cool.
Yeah, saw a lot of birds.
Yeah, I like blue jays. Thus, my drone business is named after them.
Sure.
But
did you know they're a type of corvid?
I did know that they were a type of corvid. Yeah. Did you know that there's actually two different types of blue jays? There's the regular blue jay, and then there's the Steller's jay, which is more out west, and it has like a black head and top chest, and then the traditional blue going the rest of the way down.
I have heard of the Steller's jay, but I thought it was just another one of those like multiple common names for the same species.
Yeah, no, it actually looks quite different from the standard blue jay. There you go. I got an insect fact and I got an avian fact in this episode. What's up?
Okay, so
Whales.
going off of neurological stuff still, they found what is known as spindle cells in their brain. So spindle cells is the term that they use for cells that are thought to be responsible for intuitive choices and are also linked to emotions.
Okay.
So they were thought to only be in humans and a few primates. But now we've discovered them in humpbacks, fin whales, sperm whales, orcas, belugas, bottlenose, and rhesos dolphins too. So just to name a few. There's also some found in elephants too, which there's a huge neurological stuff surrounding elephants and how smart they are.
Right.
Dolphins, they pass. Do you know what the mirror test is? So like they'll put like a.
Is it like to see if they can identify like themselves?
Like self-awareness.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I didn't know it was called that, but yeah, I'm aware. I'm aware of the self-awareness.
So some dolphins have passed the mirror test, and I don't know if they've done any studies on like big whales specifically, but another sign of intelligence that they have. Some dolphins, they actually use tools. You get there.
I was trying to be subtle and you called me out. I took a sip of my water and I just inhaled it. I'm trying to develop gills here, ladies and gentlemen. But
okay.
Yeah, so you were saying, sorry.
So they some dolphins have actually been observed to use tools.
How very sophisticated of them.
I like that one.
That was a pretty good one.
So they use sponges and they kind of like stick it on the tip of their nose so they can protect themselves when they dig around in rocks and stuff. They also, dolphins are kind of scary. I'm honestly more scared of dolphins than I am of sharks.
Really? Tell us why.
Yeah. Sharks I just kind of see them as little like sea puppies, pretty much. They're just curious. But dolphins, since they're smart, they can do a lot of messed up stuff. They like play around with their food. They've like tortured other dolphins in their pod.
Don't they like take puffer fish or whatever and they'll like get high off of them too?
Yep.
Yeah.
So they'll play around and like pass around puffer fish so they can prick themselves with the venom that they have, and they'll actually get kind of like a high off of it. So
wild.
Yeah,
dolphins are surfer dudes.
They've done some messed up stuff, which probably shouldn't mention on a family-friendly podcast. But
no, we're gonna keep this one non-explicit. I put that there was nothing bad in this here, so
yeah. So we'll skip over some of the worst stuff that they've done.
Sounds good. Don't want to have a turtle disaster on the show.
It took me a second to get that one. But I'll take it.
All right, fair enough.
But last thing of their intelligence is that they actually are cooperative. The biggest thing, dolphins hunt in pods. I actually saw some of this on my trip.
Oh, sweet.
So we went out to dolphin watching, which was pretty fun. I got a taste of, I guess, getting my sea legs in a little bit, although it wasn't too bad.
Was it a fantastic experience?
It was. It really was. I was having a great time.
Yeah, you were sending me some videos of it. It looked pretty cool to be out on the water.
Mm-hmm. So we weren't too far out on the bay or anything, but it was still a little choppy. It was fun. There's definitely a lot worse we could experience. But anyway, where we were, it was, I believe, it was kind of low tide. So a lot of these sandbanks and stuff were kind of showing, or at least shallower. So we actually saw some dolphins. They would get in a line and they would push towards a sandbank. So they were actually, what the guy was saying, and there was a mythology professor out with us too. So he was saying that they actually do that to like push all the fish and trap them against the sandbank so that they can eat better. So they do that all the time. Orcas, they'll if there's like a seal on a floating ice sheet, they'll kind of come up to it, and then right as they're about to hit it, they go down really fast, so they kind of make a wave, and so that they'll splash the seal off of the ice sheet.
I think you've sent me a video about that on Instagram or something. That's pretty cool to see, like intelligence-wise, that they're able to develop like complex strategy like that.
Yeah, they get scary smart, but not just the quick and fast ones do this kind of stuff. Humpback whales, one of their feeding methods called bubble feeding is they'll from the bottom of like a school of fish, they'll start to blow little bubbles. And from the surface, it actually somewhat looks like a Fibonacci sequence. You've been wanting me to bring this up on the show for a while now, too. So I thought it was a good little
there we go
way to put that in there. But it's a rough Fibonacci sequence, to be fair.
I mean, it's not necessarily going to be perfect in nature every single time.
But it is pretty cool to see how they do. It is a pretty clean circle. But that'll like disorient and trap the fish in a ring of bubbles, and then they'll come up and eat. So they work cooperatively.
Whale, how the turntables.
So now that we're done discussing some of the science behind whales. Another thing that I learned, they study the microbiomes of whales, and how they do this is with drones and crossbows.
Elaborate on that. I'm curious now. You've piqued my interest.
So they'll fly a drone over whenever they're at the surface and like spouting out the blowhole stuff. So then they collect like the mucus or whatever from their internal microbiome on the drone that they can then sample. And then they use a crossbow with a specialized tip to it that when it hits, it'll actually get a little skin sample. So then they'll reel it back in, and then they have a little skin sample so they can see the microbiome on the skin.
Oh, okay. Kind of like when you take like the cheek swabs or whatever for like your petri dish stuff and all that in biology class. Okay.
Yeah. So there's a whole field to just whale microbiomes, but we're not getting into that right now.
Yeah. That's too small of a field for the sake of a podcast.
Exactly.
Didn't do that joke on purpose.
I already used that one.
Bringing it back, baby. All right. Sorry. Keep going.
So, you might be asking yourself, this is a mythological podcast. Why are we just talking about whale science? Well, whales are...
Trace hijacked the episode and didn't give me a say.
Yeah, that's fair. But there is a lot of mythology surrounding whales. As you can imagine, Hawaiian culture, whales are a huge part of that. Among various other cultures with Maori, Native American, Aboriginal, Vietnam tribes, they're all considered like sacred.
Eskimos too, right?
I mean, yeah, in like up in the...
Because that's like their main source of food and sustenance is like they use everything from the whale to survive, or at least they did back in like ancient times.
I mean, they still do. They get like special permits so they can keep hunting whales and stuff. Right. But they're still kind of limited. Whaling's, I forgot to get into it, but going back a little bit, a big issue with whales right now is obviously whaling was a big thing that happened. So their numbers declined from like pre-whaling populations to now. It's like over 90% of the populations died.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So I actually dug into a little bit of it. So I know some of the pre-whaling numbers and like how much they've bounced back. If you want me to get into that, I have those notes here too.
Well, apparently this is your episode, so you can do what you want. I'm just sitting back enjoying the show at this point, throwing in my puns. All right, you hesitated. What do you call a fish with no eyes?
Okay, so let's get into a little bit of whaling. Sorry to sidetrack from the mythology side of things still, but we'll get into that. We'll get there eventually. Yeah.
Just keep swimming. We'll get there.
I didn't really practice this too well, and my notes are a little bit of a scramble. But this is first episode.
Yeah, this is your first episode that you're reading. I've led like 15 previous ones, so it's about time I got a break actually. So
yeah, fair enough. So in whaling, it was long before the 1800s, which is what's more or less known as whaling period, whaling era. That's really when it was. The golden age of whaling was like 1840 to 1861.
Isn't that when Moby Dick was written, or right then thereabouts?
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, Moby Dick was a huge book written because of whaling stuff that was going on. Which I read like the kid version of it, which I thought was the full version. So when I got the full version of Moby Dick, I still haven't read it yet. But when I got, I had a small little book of Moby Dick when I was a kid. And then when I got the big one, it was like 3 times the size. And I was like, whoa, I do not remember all this.
Whale.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it was started in 1850, finished 18 months later. So, yeah, right around that peak of whaling season, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, so there was a long time that these whales were getting hunted with pretty much no thoughts about like what would happen to the whales if we kept doing this. But hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of whales died within those years.
Humanity is so stupid sometimes. Like honestly, like I'm gonna be a little blunt here. Humanity is really stupid. You see this with like the buffalo. You see this with the dodo bird. We're just stupid sometimes, and we just go in and kill stuff without like being like, oh, will this have consequences?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. That just blows my mind a little bit.
Yeah. Sorry.
Let me know when you're ready to continue here.
I gotta scroll back to find my notes again.
Well, tell you what, we're due for an ad break here, so let's. Oh man, I can't think of a good fish pun to do on the fly here. Shoot.
Yeah, I don't know.
Stick around, or you might get catfished. It's official. You have been baited into listening to this podcast where our fish nerd rants. And he tells us he'll get to mythology and mystery eventually.
Eventually.
I have my doubts.
There's some, but we're still getting into the science. I think at least the 2 episodes, I mean, there's some mythology ones that I'm going to be handling, but the 2 ones that I'm trying to work on, I've got 2 more science-filled episodes. So
what do you mean science-filled episodes? Are you going to hijack another one of my shows?
I might later down on the road.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. That would be Gilliant. Like brilliant, but gills.
Okay. I got the gill part, but I was like, what are you trying to say? But anyway, let's get into some of the pre-whaling numbers and like, so they have started to bounce back. 1984, there was a big whaling ban. I can't remember the name of the organization that kind of kickstarted it, but I know the World Wildlife Fund is a big part of it too. Actually, I might have those notes here too. Yeah, maybe not. We'll get there. These notes are from like the beginning of this year.
Holy carp, are you not organized?
Okay. So I did a speech on whaling populations at the start of spring 2024 semester, which I'm sure I've told you about whenever that was happening.
I do remember you got a very good grade, but my big question is, did you have a good hook at the beginning?
I think so.
Okay.
Do you want me to go through that whole speech now?
No, you're good. Whatever you need, whatever your direction is, Mr. Podcast Stealer.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to start with the largest whale, the blue whale. So pre-whaling numbers, there's estimated of 350,000 around the globe, which is quite a bit. Not as many as some species out there, because some species are still in like the millions range. But big whales, they got plenty of ground to cover. So these were probably one of the easiest targets of whaling, because they were the biggest, they were the slowest to hunt down. So very easy targets. So the blue whales, they actually dropped by 99%.
Whew.
So they got down to around 5,000 globally, and possibly even lower.
That's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
That's just ignorant as a human species to go after something that extreme like that.
And these guys, they take a while to recover too. they only breed like every 2 to 3 years. So that's a long time.
So a complex reproductive cycle like Kyle Mundi in Star Wars.
Chiari Mundi.
I don't speak Italian. Okay, anyway.
I have to one-up you on my Star Wars nerd, too.
I mean, I one-upped you on insect etymology study, and I one-upped you on apian knowledge here. So, I mean, you've got to have marine biology and Star Wars nerdom to default back to. So, it's fair.
Fair enough. But yeah, so their food also takes a factor into this. They use a method called lunge feeding. So they just kind of like shoot forward almost, and just like a big burst of energy, and then they get a bunch of food. But they also have a lot of like fat stores, so they don't have to use as much energy later down the line. But the populations around these days are somewhere between 10 to 25,000. So they've bounced back a decent bit since the 80s, but there's still
anywhere from 2 to 5 times is a good recovery. But yeah, it's nowhere near what it used to be.
So we're going to go second largest is the fin whales, which there were quite my sources on this were a lot harder to find. I guess they aren't as cool as blue whales. I mean,
maybe just not as much study done.
Yeah, because everyone wants to focus on the biggest, but like the second, no one is like.
I mean, who really pays attention to second place a lot of times?
Yeah,
like,
who's the second person that stepped foot on the moon?
Yeah, who was second place in any sport like the Olympics? Like no one. Like it's a big deal, but it's like you've kind of have that psychological aspect where you're like. Yeah, I could have been a little bit better. Like, who was the second fastest human after Usain Bolt? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. So the one source I found is that it said that there was a possible 500,000 pre-whaling population. So they actually gave me a number on how many were killed in just the 1900s. So from 1900 to 1980, 750,000 were killed.
Wow.
In 80 years, 750,000 fin whales were killed. That's not even to mention all the other types of whales too. But in some places like the North Pacific, the population got as low as 300.
How many did you say that was? 750,000?
Yeah, 750,000 were killed in just 80 years.
So let's put that into perspective here. So 750,000. There are 29,200 days in 80 years. So that's not even close on the scale. So 750,000 divided by 29,200. That's like 25, 26 whales being killed a day on average of just this one type of whale for 80 years straight.
Yeah.
That's wild. And that's literally a whale being killed more than every hour. Like every 45, 55 minutes, a whale is being killed.
Yeah, it's
for 80 years.
Whaling is
that's
probably
insane.
One of the worst things we've ever done.
That's insane. Like I get hunting is necessary to a degree. I'm not saying we should prohibit all hunting.
Yeah, but we just used it to make candles.
Yeah,
that's like the main thing we used it for.
Beeswax. I got a beehive out back. Like I don't know, man. That just blows my mind. Like I get there's a necessity to hunt stuff, but like hunting to that extreme, that blows my mind.
Well, the mentality of the ocean was out of sight, out of mind. So like even hunting whales to that degree, we dumped so much trash in there. I mean, we still do just because we don't care. Yeah. Like as long as we aren't seeing it on mainland, we're good, right? But yeah, so some populations got as low as 300. So they kind of reproduce the same amount as the blue whales. They're pretty similar. I mean, they are the second largest, so they're going to be pretty close to the blue whales and everything. But now they have bounced back a lot stronger. I couldn't find a global population with these guys, but now they're sitting at around 50 to 90,000 around the globe. And it is going up at a pretty good incline too.
That's good.
I think there's a graph somewhere that shows some pretty good visuals of like how much they fell down, how much they've bounced back. I'd have to dig around for that, but one of the most well-known whales is the humpback whale. That's like one of the iconic whales. If you look up whale, it's probably going to be one of them that you see.
Right.
Most of them. So surprisingly, I guess they don't think that there were that many. There was only, I was seeing pre-whaling populations were 240,000. So not as much, which I find kind of interesting. But they still dropped down to 5,000 and as low as 700 in the entire northern hemisphere.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder why their population was smaller, because you'd think being, because you said they're not quite the biggest, but they're still pretty big, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a whale, so it's going to be huge, but I don't even think they're in the top 5, to be honest. They might be, but I'm not sure. But
you don't have a direct answer for me on a fish question? You're going to get fired as the resident fish nerd on here.
These are mammals.
All right, you know what? You got me there.
Yeah.
Or should I say you caught me there? Exquisite. Exquisite.
Exquisite. I don't think that one works that well.
That didn't roll off the tongue as well as I imagined in my mind. That was a turtle disaster.
Second time around for that one too, huh?
Yeah. Sometimes speech is my nemesis.
Okay.
I'll stop.
I like that one. I like that one.
You got to ink about it.
Gosh.
Oh my cod. I said cod.
Yeah, you don't want to clarify that in the next episode.
No, I'd rather not. Oh man.
But yeah, I am curious to see why they think that the populations for these guys were less, because you think they'd be more abundant. I mean, they're more.
Yeah, so you almost got to wonder if there's something we haven't discovered that's like comparable in size or that would hunt them in the ocean that's a predator. Because I don't know what do predators look like besides humans for humpback whales.
Nothing. Really.
Okay, so maybe something we don't know about then.
Sea monster.
Yeah, probably something we don't know about.
Yeah.
Nessie.
I don't think a plesiosaur would be it, but there are some big prehistoric things that could potentially.
Please, could you agree that it's going to be a plesiosaur?
No.
Okay.
But yeah, they are. They reproduce a lot faster and they mature quicker, so they can bounce back a lot faster. So they have their bubble ring, which is a more efficient way to eat too. So they can get energy a lot quicker. So that also comes into it. So they can mature quicker. They can reproduce faster, stuff like that. So they've actually bounced back to around 135,000 to these days. So that's pretty good. I mean, still not.
They're over the hump. And with that being said, we are going to cast a net and put a pause here for a short ad break.
Okay.
And we hope that you stick around like a starfish. Trace is nearly at his last craw with me and all of these puns that I keep doing on Musings on Mysteries in the Mythical Matrix, where we explore more than just myth and mystery, where we explore life, specifically fish life today, in honor of your fish trip. What else do you have to tell us about whales, Trace?
So we're going to get back on track with the mythology a little bit here. So as I was saying, they're sacred in a lot of cultures, a lot of coastal cultures, but I feel like that's pretty normal, I would say. I mean, a lot of these like tribal communities, stuff like that, they're always going to have some kind of link of their mythologies to nature, because that's just what was surrounding them at the time. But there's a lot of cool, like, drawings, carvings of whales. Hawaiian culture, they have tons and tons of stories with whales. I mean, too many to get into with this here, and a lot of hard to pronounce names, so I'm not gonna try and butcher those.
Come on, man. I've done interlinear Hebrew on the podcast. Surely you could pronounce a couple Hawaiian names.
Yeah, but you prepared to pronounce the Hebrew
Oh,
words.
so you just showed up unprepared to hijack my episode.
Yeah.
Okay. You barnacle.
Mm-hmm. I will try and pronounce this one. The Kumulipu creation chant, they have a line in it that is translated to born is the whale living in the sea. So there's some linkage there to creation myths and stuff,
that's
too.
Cool.
Yeah.
We'll have to do Hawaiian myth at some point. There's so many mythologies I want to dive into, but it'll be years. There's a lot to sift through, man. You know, we've only really scratched the surface of mythology. We've really hit on biblical mythology and then mythology of science a bit, and that's it at this point.
Yeah.
So
they also some Polynesian stories. It said that whales help them discover the Hawaiian Islands. That's just a little tidbit. Yeah, like you said, I really want to get into Hawaiian culture. What I really, really want to get into is the Aboriginal mythologies, because that is the best oral history that's like been maintained over the years.
Yeah, that'd be cool. But yep, it's all on the list. We have a lot of awesome directions we're planning on going. But,
So I don't want to get too much into the mythologies. Just a little cliff notes and stuff. A lot of symbolisms of like family, harmony, protection, and Native American stuff. Tons of symbol.
Anemones.
I literally just said the word, but anyway.
Trace needs to go back and get schooled. Anyway.
Okay, so now we're going to go into an extended creature fact. So what I've coined as mythical mistakes. So this is all of the little sea monsters and stuff that I've been able to find that could be just mistaken whales. So one of the biggest ones.
Sounds fishy to me.
One of the biggest ones that has a lot of debate surrounding it. Some people say, no, that's just an urban legend, whatever. But is that a lot of sea serpents can be attributed to whale genitalia.
That's an awkward mistake. Especially looking now, I can't. This is family friendly.
Yeah, if you just fair warning if you want to look into that stuff, but it's there is a resemblance, I will say. So besides that, here's a cool thing that it's not really a mistake, but a link between ancient stories and modern day science. So in Norse mythology, there is a sea creature called a hafgufa. The depictions vary. God of the game series, God of War, they have it as a giant jellyfish. There's a few other pictures and depictions that I've seen of it, but one of the things that it was said to do, it was said to regurgitate some food and then sit there with its mouth open, and then whenever fish would like accumulate there, it would shut its mouth and eat. So in 2011, they actually found that humpbacks did this exact same feeding method.
Huh.
So they were trying to. So a lot of that science was trying to say that, oh, it's a new feeding method. So again, attributing to the intelligence of whales and stuff is saying they've learned a new feeding method. But
did they really learn a new feeding method, or have we just misunderstood? Mythology and chalk this up to being one thing when it's really just something else that someone saw. So it's like a fish story. Every time you tell it gets bigger and bigger, it changes and gets more scary. It's a fish story.
So it's really fascinating to think that Vikings were just ancient marine biologists, pretty much.
I wonder why you like Vikings so much.
I mean, yeah, but it's cool to think that they actually got close enough to these animals that they could observe these and like write them down, or at least spread the story around.
Well, yeah, because you think about Vikings being like the stereotypical Viking being kind of like this bloodthirsty killer. That's how they're kind of at least chalked up in terms of like literature. that's really not always the case. A lot of times they were explorers. Like Leif Erikson was very much more an explorer type than a fighting type. I mean, from my understanding, he could certainly fight, but like all Vikings could fight. But, it was more about the exploration a lot of times than actually just going out and pillaging and raiding things. Mm-hmm. But I digress.
So another thing with Norse is that they actually coined the term narwhal. So they thought narwhals were just the bloated corpses of dead sailors. So narwhal, I should have been prepared for this. This is off the top of my head. But yeah, they just thought that narwhals, they were like gray and mottled and stuff. So I guess whenever they would see them in the water, that they would then think, oh, it's dead sailor, or like, stories told get exaggerated over time. Bits and pieces get lost, but yeah.
Aren't narwhals the things that have like the unicorn spike on their face?
Yeah. So it's actually a tooth as well.
The only reason I know that is from Elf.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I didn't know it was a tooth. So
yeah, it's just a big tooth, mostly found in males, but sometimes in females. Yeah, there's actually some cool. There might be some crossbreeding between narwhals and belugas.
Interesting.
So narluga, they've actually found like a skull. I've seen pictures of a skull of it, and they're some.
Don't give it to the Smithsonian or it'll disappear.
Yeah, so it's not uncommon to see narwhals and belugas kind of mingled together a bit.
Okay, I want to do a little tangent here real quick. Mm-hmm. So like, how there's like this like cliche thing to talk about like unicorns being this really bizarre mythological creature, right? And how people will be like, talking about things like the Bible and be like, oh, your book full of unicorns and that kind of thing. Like, can we just stop for a minute and think that we literally have a whale that has a unicorn horn on its face that's technically a tooth? We have things like the rhino. We have giraffes that have like 30-foot long necks. What's like, is it really that far of a stretch to say unicorns could have even existed? Like,
I mean, in terms of, in reality, I don't think we'll ever truly know.
Unless we uncover like a corpse with something like that we can for sure identify, like a fossil. But I'm just saying, like, in terms of like all the wild creatures we already know exist.
Yeah, it's not that far out to say that there's a horse with a horn somewhere.
Exactly, that's my point. Or like a horse with wings, like the Pegasus.
But I think people get a little carried away with, it's a pink unicorn with a bunch of fairy dust coming.
Yeah.
Off
it poops rainbows.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
So I think people get caught up too much into the fairy tale aspect of it, but like in reality, it could very well be easily explained as to someone coming back from a continental trip and just trying to describe a rhino, and then it gets confused.
Yeah, it's like a fish story,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna keep going back to that because it's true. But all right, so we're getting close to an hour here, Trace. Actually, I think we're probably over an hour with breaks in the intro and all that. So what else you got for us?
So it might go a little over an hour, but
no, not allowed. How dare you? I'm cutting it off in exactly 1 minute.
So
I'm kidding.
This is not a very well-known story, I don't think. But the HMS Daedalus, in 1848, several crew and the captain witnessed a 60-foot sea serpent for 20 minutes.
I love this story. I know it.
Do you know it? Okay.
Yeah, I know this. This is World War I, right?
No.
No?
No. That's
That was the U-boat one.
Yeah. I think.
Yeah.
I'm saving that for another episode because that's something else entirely.
Spoiled it. Ruined it for the listeners. Anyone listening to this is going to hate me forever now.
Yeah. I also did say this was 1848.
Oh, I spaced out for a second. I did a trace and I just like stopped listening for a split second. And I tuned back in when I heard the story. I'm like, oh wait, this is a cool story. The Daedalus sounds familiar though. But anyway, please continue.
So, the captain and several crew witnessed the sea serpent that the captain even said that it was close enough that he said if it was an acquaintance of his, he would recognize it.
Okay,
so that kind of makes sense. So like it's close enough that like if I saw you at a in the store.
Like 100 feet away or so.
Yeah.
So it was probably within like 100, 150 feet at most.
So it was close enough to recognize that. So it was 60 feet long, and he said that its head was like 4 feet out of the water. So when it was published in the papers, it got a lot of scrutiny around it because this is like a naval officer of the British Navy. Well,
like the same thing as a Tic Tac UFO, it gets a lot of scrutiny around it because it's, an officer of ours in the Navy claiming something like that. So,
a biologist who just so happens to be Sir Richard Owens, the same guy who invented the term dinosaur, he disputed this claim. So, I know, the same guy.
Why would he dispute it, of all people?
I know. He said that it was an elephant seal. He tried to say that it was an elephant seal, and that the trailing body was just the wake of the seal, which I can kind of understand. But there's also artist depictions of this thing. The captain had them drawn, commissioned later on to try and draw this thing. And they do not look like an elephant seal.
Interesting.
Yes.
I'm going to look this up.
I do have some pictures here that I can show you at some point. But if you just look up HMS Daedalus Sea Monster, it should come up. There's a few different drawings and stuff that came from this. But yeah, the guy who invented the term dinosaur disclaimed this. There's also... Yeah, so within the same... Not the same year, but within the time frame of a year, 2 other claims were made of a similar creature as well. So an American brig spotted something very similar, very close to where the Daedalus saw it. I forgot to grab the place that this was. It's between... whatever. And then in the next year, still within the time frame of a year, another Royal Navy sloop saw another serpent matching the same description as well.
So sea serpents are likely a real thing. We just haven't actually discovered them.
Mm-hmm. And this is, like a century and a half ago, more than that. So who knows what if something could have been alive then that isn't now. It might have just died out. Or, it could just be some...
Does it say... I'm looking at this now on like Wikipedia and all of that. Does it say where exactly they were, though?
It does,
like location-wise?
Somewhere. I'd have to kind of go back to my sources to try and find that. But
I am kind of curious to see...
Somewhere in the Atlantic.
Okay.
I believe.
Oh, okay, yeah. Between the Cape Cod of Good Hope and St. Helena, at least according to Wikipedia.
Yep. That's what I was getting to. So, on top of these 2 corroborating witnesses within the year, a decade later, a ship in the same area saw a 20-foot piece of seaweed that the roots kind of looked like a head. So they then claimed that, the Daedalus must have seen the same kind of seaweed.
Oh.
And they thought it was that. Which, I could see that too. So, could this be another prehistoric animal that still roamed the oceans? Or was it a hallucination from being out on the seas for a long while? Or maybe it's just a very explainable thing that we can explain now that they couldn't back then. It's in all reality, it's just another mystery that's lost to time. We're never really gonna know.
Right.
This is also in the same kind of era where a lot of these sea serpent sightings were getting disproved, or like a lot of people trying to debunk them. It was going a lot more scientific route that instead of like it's just another tall tale kind of thing from the sea, instead of like a here be monsters kind of thing. But on a somewhat similar story, around the same time in 1845, a doctor, I say in quotes because he is known to be a fraud.
Oh boy.
Dr. quote unquote Albert Koch was known to make a few fake skeletons of various things. He did a mammoth that was just pieced together of a few different skeletons that he found, and even some like wooden blocks. But he he tried to make a fossil of the biblical Leviathan.
Oh boy! All right.
So, or as he called it, the Hydrarchos. So he took 6 Basilosaurus skeletons, which the Owens, the dinosaur guy, he actually helped distinguish a Basilosaurus was a mammal instead of a reptile, like originally thought. So it is interesting that he would disprove that claim so quickly about the Daedalus.
Right.
But this...
Maybe he's just surrounded by a lot of hoaxes.
Maybe. And he was a very scientific guy.
Yeah,
I
and
imagine.
he's very focused on, actual truth like dinosaurs, and people are probably questioning it because it's such a bizarre thing and everyone's coming out of believing about dragons and not about dinosaurs. Yeah. And so he had to be very careful with his reputation and kind of maybe just dismiss some things that seemed a little too sketchy without enough investigation, which I think is understandable.
Yeah, but I think if you're taking a story from a naval officer, they have a reputation to uphold.
They do.
They're going out on a limb here and risking their entire career to tell this story, and then they get all the scrutiny. They actually made some other, in response to the seaweed, they came out again and they tried to, they did it anonymously this time. They just said, a crew or an officer of the Daedalus, something like that, so they would try and not get their reputation ruined again.
Okay.
But yeah, so this guy, he took 6 Basilosaurus skeletons, some whale skeletons, and even some ammonite shells to make this alleged sea serpent. There's some sketches of it too, which it actually looks kind of cool, but also so fake.
And that would be one of those people that we're talking about in the beginning of the show. And we say, those of you who have confirmation bias, you will find what you're looking for. Yeah. It's inevitable.
So I want to end it off here with just one other small little urban legend of whales of Great Salt Lake in Utah. So the story changes a lot depending on where you read it. A lot of different motives were found, but the story goes, in 1875, James Wickman put 2 35-foot whales and put them in Great Salt Lake to see if they could... The motive varies. Some stories say that he was trying to make a tourist attraction. Some were he was doing it out of scientific intrigue to see if they could survive in the salt water there. Or the most common one I've seen is that he was trying to start a whale oil industry in Utah. So this is sadly a confirmed hoax, but there is a really cool picture of a train cart that he supposedly had commissioned that has a whale in it, but that's confirmed it's a hoax and is a little project to see how realistic they could get it.
Okay.
So it was intentionally a hoax, I believe.
So it's just they tried to do something for science and people misunderstood.
Well, no, there were no whales in Great Salt Lake because the lake only gets down to 30 feet deep, and it's 8 times saltier than the ocean, so nothing can really survive in there. Okay. But it is still a cool little picture. It's just a whale in a train cart, and it's old timey and stuff, but it's pretty cool. But anyway, that is a whale of an episode.
That is a whale of a tale. And I will... All right, so we're not done with this episode. We're going to take a quick break here, and we hope you'll tune back in just a second. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. I am glad that you have decided to tune back in with us. Trace, what's the... Well, before I give you that, I was listening back to some of the episodes, and I talked with Trace about this. I got a little annoyed at myself because we did all the follow-ups at the front, and I feel like that scares off new listeners. So from here on out, and I'm probably going to say all this stuff again in the next episode as well, because some of our listeners might choose not to tune into this since fish aren't their cup of tea. Which is totally fine, but we might also attract
Get those guys out of here. Get them out of here. We don't want those.
But I'll probably say this at the end of the next episode too, but we're going to do follow-ups from here on out at the end of episodes, not at the beginning, just so that we don't scare new listeners off with our long rants and ramblings. So first thing I'll say is, Trace, what's the difference between a piano, a tuna, and a pot of glue?
I feel like I've heard this joke before.
You can tune a piano, but you can't piano a tuna.
What about the glue?
I knew you'd get stuck there. All right.
I saw it coming. I was like, I have to give it to him.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for playing along. All right. So I got a shout out on YouTube. Someone commented, "Hi, I'm the 7th viewer to our quantum physics episode. Keep going, champs." Props, buddy. Appreciate it. Honestly, getting listener interactions like that definitely helps keep us going.
Yes.
Because it shows us that people are actually interested in what we're talking about and that we're not just talking to ourselves the whole time.
So that was the quantum one?
That was the quantum one, yes.
Okay.
So
well, hopefully you'll enjoy this one too.
We are quantumly transcending through whales and time to say thank you.
There you go.
So that being said, I did get one other correspondence. I'm going to leave it very vague. Because the criticism was to our episode 8 is the Bible viable one, and the listener seemed to misunderstand the intent of the episode and proceeded to list a number of criticisms, all of which were logical fallacies. And I'm not saying this to pick on this listener or anyone in particular, but I will say, like, look, I welcome disagreements. And I'm sure you do too. Like if someone has actual facts or data but disagrees with stuff. In fact, I'm going back next episode since Trace hijacked this one, and I'm going to do a whole nother Science 3 episode because I was corresponding with some people and I had some information brought to my attention that I wanted to address that I just didn't address because I wasn't aware of it. But that's something we're going to go back and we're going to do a Science 3 episode for our next episode, hopefully, if all goes well. Because of that, I have no problem with any of the listeners disagreeing with me on stuff and sending me information that contradicts what I've claimed. I'll go through and I'll analyze it. I'm skeptical, and we talked about this. I'm all for research, but I'm skeptical of research where it's being funded by big corporations and there's all sorts of biases, stuff like that. 'Cause Trace and I were recently discussing an article that had a ton of corporation bias influencing it. It's the same thing as like that Mountain Dew increasing your testes size and boosting your sperm count like thing. I think there was a lot of bias to that as well. Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. But that being said, like if you're going to send in some criticisms to the show, please make sure you are logically consistent. Like don't make it full of logical fallacies. Like I'm not saying this is an antagonistic thing at all, but in my humble opinion, if all you have to do to counter us is to throw out a bunch of logical fallacies, you're doing a disservice to yourself more than anything else. We're all about having a logical discourse and a logical conversation here. I will go back and do like near infinite number of episodes as long as the show is still going. I will go back and do infinite number of continuation episodes if there are new facts and new information that comes to light that contradicts the claim. I have no problem with that. Just make sure you're being consistent with yourself and the facts. Lay out an argument. If you're not going to lay out an argument and you're just going to do appeal to authority and ad hominem and create straw mans.
Yeah, be consistent in the argument topic too. I was just arguing with a guy over like coral stuff, and he was bringing up like COVID vaccinations. I was like, we're not even talking about that right now.
It's like, yeah, it's apples to oranges. It's comparing two things that aren't necessarily related. Now, if you want to argue that, there's bias within certain scientific studies, okay, bring it. But then where's the evidence, Yeah. Again, we're speaking very broadly on a lot of different topics, so it's going to be hard to do a blanket absolute statement. But just for our listeners out there, we follow the Socratic method. Logical fallacies are a thing. It's a good thing. If you haven't ever heard of them before, you should go look them up and be aware. There's nothing wrong with having your feathers rustled. And I feel like if anyone's listening, they're okay with that at this point, to be listening to episode 16 and us rant about whales for an hour and 15 minutes about at this point.
Yeah.
But having your viewpoints challenged is not a bad idea. You should welcome that. I welcome that. Like, I've done that. I've changed my belief system several times.
Yeah, I just changed your mind on some big
yeah,
thing that
we
we'll
won't say
probably
what.
get into.
We won't say what, but we'll get into that on a future episode. Yeah, where I'm very well researched, so it's hard to change my mind, but I'm open to my mind being changed by the facts. And Trace laid out a very convincing argument on something we'll get into in a future episode, and it changed my mind. So I am open to being wrong. I'm never going to say I am, unless I have tongue in cheek, because I will absolutely say I'm always right tongue in cheek. But honestly, I'm open to being wrong. I want to learn. And I know Trace is in the same boat. So for all of our listeners out there, you got something that is factual or a good, sound, logical argument you want to throw our way, I foresee us doing listener communication episodes, and I would love to go through stuff like that. But if all you can say is logical fallacies and throw logical fallacies at us, then it sounds like you might be suffering from some confirmation bias, or maybe even brainwashed to a degree, just buying into what is being sold by the standard model approach to life. And maybe you need to, instead of having that emotional reaction that's usually triggered by brainwashing and by being an emotional reaction to something like that is usually like you have this deep rooted belief that's not true and you don't have an argument for it. And so you just have an emotional reaction. I know I've had that before. And I have to stop myself and be like, why do I feel this way? It's because I believe something that isn't actually true and I have no defense for it. So I'm angry. So I need to let that go and adjust and fix it. And if you have an emotional reaction to a lot of the stuff we're saying here, then it's probably same category for you. And that's okay. It's happened to me before. But then you need to go do your own research and figure out what the truth is. So with that being said, I think we'll close it out here. You can get a hold of us at m.quad.musings@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at m.quad.musings. You can type in the podcast handle, Musings on Mysteries in the Mythical Matrix, on Facebook, and you can find us there as well. We invite you to email us and send us your thoughts, perspectives, comments, snide remarks, confessions, concessions, anything you have that would add to this conversation we have going here. But whether you're listening above the earth, below the earth, or on the earth, we invite you to quantumly transcend time with us and interact with us as we continue this ongoing conversation. And we hope that you tune it in next time.